Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Erin Kopek, and you've joined us for our HiNotes presentation here. I am the VP of Marketing here at Higher Level, and super excited for our program today. We have a couple of our higher level team members that are resident experts in all things HR, so excited to hear what they have to say. We have Summer Vanderbilt and Whitney Morris with the team, and we'll go over a few housekeeping things. So today they're going to go through and really shed some light on interview do's and don'ts, what questions to ask, valuable tips and takeaways, and just really making sure you know what's off limits. A few things before we get started. You are all in listen-only mode with GoToWebinar today, but if you do have questions, save those till the end, and we will give you some time to get all that in. This call will last less than an hour, so we'll get you back to your day, and just really super excited to get started. And I'll pass it off to Summer and Whitney to do some introductions and tell you a bit about themselves. Thank you.
Thanks.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks, Erin. All right, hoping you all can see our screen here. Of course, hitting on those interview do's and don'ts. And Whitney, I'll let you go ahead and do your introduction.
Yeah, so I'm Whitney Morris. I'm a Senior Human Resources Consultant here at Higher Level. Been here for a little over 2 years. Essentially, I'm a people operations professional with about 20 years of experience in leadership, learning and development, human resources, and project management. I have been working since I was 14, which lends to the fact that I've had 21 different jobs. So what that's given me is a lot of diverse experiences and opportunities where I've gotten to learn what I like, what I don't like, you know, in a work environment, but also good leaders and how I want to lead, but also working with tons of different people, a lot of customer service experiences in that, and just a lot of challenges, and learn that you can get through anything. So that's me, Summer.
Of course, hi guys, I am Summer Vanderbilt. So I'm the Recruitment Development Manager here at Higher Level. I've been with the team for 8 years now, started working at our branch level, working with a lot of you, our clients, and helping find some of the best candidates to fill your jobs. Really enjoyed that piece and have continued to grow my career at Higher Level, taking on recruitment for our team, training our team, and continuing with the learning and development there. My professional career, of course, started in the TV news industry over 10 years ago. And I think that's where my love for interviewing really started, having those conversations. Of course, it's an entirely different type of interviewing that we're going to be talking about today, but it all gets down to the conversations that we're having with people. And honestly, that's what an interview comes down to, is having a great conversation to truly understand a person, why they want to do this job, if they're capable of doing a job, and learning about them as a person. So as we dive in, I hope some of these topics and situations that come up in the interview environment are things that you resonate with and maybe have thought about over the course of your time interviewing.
Great. So our time together, what we want to really focus on is these sensitive topics that you might have questions about during an interview, or something that you've always wanted to ask a candidate, or they just might come up and you don't know how to handle them. So like I tell my children, we want to learn from our mistakes, but we also want to learn from others' mistakes too. And that's really essentially what we're going to be talking about today, is that these laws and kind of rules that have come up from our past and history of you know, working with candidates and employees, and so we want to learn from those mistakes and understand kind of why we have to follow these rules. So wanted to share some information surrounding illegal interview questions. Interview question laws in the US largely revolve around equality legislation that enforces federal laws and is overseen by the EEOC, which was born from the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The EEOC specifically aims to keep workplaces fair and inclusive, and to prevent unlawful discrimination. So they guide federal agencies and intervene in cases where people make allegations against employers. Specifically topics to stay away from. We're going to go over this a little bit later as well, but gender, age, religion, political affiliation, race, or disability. These can all be illegal, and really regardless of your intent or what you mean by asking the questions, you really have to be careful with those. And then illegal interview questions are are those that are deemed discriminatory by the EEOC based on several different pieces of important US legislation. So I want to share those with you guys next, just so that you understand these aren't things that it's just Summer and I think are important. Again, it's just things that we, to think that, oh, this is what you need to include. But no, this is really based on specific US legislation and specific laws. So the Civil Rights Act of 1964, this specifically refers to the prohibition of employment discrimination based on sex, color, race, national origin, and religion. Number 2, Age Discrimination in Employment Act, or ADEA. This prevents employers from discriminating against employees 40 years or older based on their age, specifically referring to areas of employment such as hiring, firing, promotion, payment, privileges, and general terms and conditions. And the third one that's going to be included in our information today is the ADA, and this promotes disability inclusion in the workplace and prohibits discrimination against people with disabilities in public areas. So we're going to go through, again, some more of that on disabilities a little bit later, as now that area of disabilities it's all encompassing, and so it's really important that you understand what that includes. But yeah, so just some information on that. So just as a reminder today, we want to discuss with you politically correct alternatives to those tricky questions or subjects that you want to bring up in an interview or might come up but you just don't know how to handle it. And then we hope that you gain invaluable tips to help you stay compliant through the interview process, as that is the goal. We want to share with you how to stay out of hot water with the EEOC or with any possible candidates or applicants. And then also help you provide a really great experience with them. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So the first topic we want to go over is, have you ever wondered about an employee's use or applicant's use of sick time? So I think a lot of times, basically we want people to show up, right? We want them to show up. We want them to be consistent. In my previous life, I opened and ran 2 different private preschools. And so in childcare, if you're not familiar with it, requires you to meet, some compliance and some rules and regulations. So for every 4 infants, we had to have 1 teacher. For every 12 4-year-olds, we had to have 1 teacher in the classroom. So we had those rules and regulations to meet those ratios. So if an employee called out sick, it really, really, affected that day's operation overall. So I needed to know that my people were going to show up, right, consistently, be on time. But unfortunately, working with kids, guess what? You get sick a lot. So it was something that I always wondered about when applicants came in, but at this point, you cannot ask about their sick time. So it might be something you want to know, but you cannot ask anything specific about their use of sick time. Asking these types of questions can expose you to legal problems. So instead, it's wise to focus on asking things like, do you think you are a reliable team member, and why? Hopefully they won't say no, but if they do say yes, definitely inquire either way. Why do they think they're reliable, and see if they can elaborate on that, and see if they touch on showing up every day, being on time, and being consistent. You can also ask things like, how do you handle it when you're going to be late or absent from work? See how they answer that question about, do they call, do they email, do they text? Texting is something I really had to get used to, but from an applicant. But I think that it's really important to ask that question. And then also, what do you think are acceptable reasons to miss work? Again, you get a gauge on what they think is as acceptable or not. Another way to confirm their reliability and attendance is when calling references. You can ask general questions about the person's attendance, such as, did so-and-so show up for the majority of the required days? Or do you consider them to be reliable and dependable, and see what their response is, see if there's hesitation in their response, or if, if there's a strong affirmation of them being there. So one topic to keep in mind.
All right, next topic we want to dive into is the topic of a candidate disclosing a disability. And disabilities, that's such a wide range there that it's covered by the ADA. For instance, say somebody just mentions in an interview, I kind of have some social anxiety, and that's something that may easily just kind of come up in conversation, right? They're nervous, they're kind of fidgeting, and they may just kind of disclose to you, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm nervous, I've got a little bit of social anxiety. And that's terms that we hear pretty commonly today in just day-to-day conversation. So they may not think anything about it, but you as the interviewer, that may trigger an idea in your head right away. Is this person capable of doing this job? Are they going to be able to talk to my customers? Are they going to be able to talk with the clients that we have? Those are things that when you're the interviewer that you're probably going to start taking notes on. But just knowing that the ADA, that's something that social anxiety is one of those things that is going to be covered there. So employees, candidates, they are protected from being discriminated by those disability disclosures. Instead, when that comes up in a conversation, focus rather on the skills and qualifications that the employee presents to you on why they can do the job, why they're interested in the job, what their work history looks like. Do they get into a place where they're very comfortable and understand their duties and what's responsible of them? And they're able to go in and really own the position and perform beyond your expectations. Things that you can ask when that type of a situation comes up is really explain the job to the candidate, right? Go down all of the checklist of the duties that they will be responsible for performing, and make sure that they're able to do it within reasonable accommodations. What does that mean? As an employer, are you able to provide them reasonable accommodations to make sure that they can do that job? Is it going to put stress on your business to be able to set them up for success? That's where that reasonable accommodation comes in from. And can that candidate safely and confidently perform all the required job duties? So thinking along the lines of like in a light industrial environment, maybe they disclose that they're not able to lift heavy weight, but then the job duties says that this person needs to be able to lift 30 to 50 pounds pretty continuously. Tell the candidate that that's a requirement of this job. Are you able to perform this? You've just disclosed this to me, but this is what the job entails. Truly look on the skills and qualifications of the candidate, and they'll tell you if they can fully do this job. Now, when it comes to them disclosing things within an interview that may be a disability, that's not something you want to document. A lot of times we take interview notes and we go and we talk to our coworkers who are helping us make that deciding factor on who we're going to hire. And seeing a note such as that can easily eliminate that candidate because they don't want to hire somebody with a disability. You need to remove that bias from your interview notes so that it does not go in and make a deciding factor within your interviewing.
Okay, so next, we're going to go over discussing citizenship. So can I ask a candidate if they are a U.S. citizen? So this can definitely be a sensitive topic, right? I will preface all of this by saying you can include certain questions when applicants fill out applications online, to include if they are going to, if they can provide proof of eligibility for employment in the U.S. and will you need sponsorship? So some of this can be, kind of done beforehand in the applicant process. So if you feel like you are getting a lot of applicants where this might be coming up, this is something you need to think of, be glad to kind of walk through that with you, through what that looks like. But essentially, no, you cannot ask, hey, are you a US citizen? But what you can ask is, once offered employment, can you provide proof of eligibility for employment in the US? And do you have the legal right to work in the US? Will you need sponsorship to work? The key thing here, and with all of these topics really, is to stay consistent with each candidate. You cannot pick and choose what you ask to one and what you don't ask to another, especially with this particular question. So just keep that in mind, that if you do ask one person because you might suspect that they might need it for whatever reason, you have to ask everybody, so that you show you are not discriminating against that person. And then, a lot of times someone may have a strong accent, and you just want to know where they're from. You're just curious, right? We're conversationalists. Summer and I both, we like to hear their story. We want to know. But that can open yourself up to some legal problems. So really stay away from, oh, I hear your accent. Where are you from? It sounds interesting. Unless you really think it's going to interfere with the job. That, like kind of Summer addressed, it's a different topic, but really keep it, close to and centered around, can they provide eligibility for employment to work in the US? And will they need sponsorship? So again, just stay consistent, stick to that, and it'll help you stay out of those legal problems.
All right, social media. How often do you get a candidate and the first thing that you want to do is go and screen their Facebook account and see, who is this person? That name sounds familiar. I think I know them, or I know that last name. I think they may be related to so and so. And you want to go to social media and check the account and validate that, right? And see, do I know this person? What are they posting about? I think maybe their kid is on the same soccer team as, maybe my child, and going to validate those things. It is what it is. Social media is a handy tool, but we really should probably remove it from our screening of candidates, because it is going to open up a lot of doors for, once again, that discrimination. Remember when Whitney went over the different US legislations for protected classes with our applicants? Getting onto social media can expose you to all of those things that a candidate can come back then and say, they discriminated against me because of my race or because of my age. They went to social media and saw how old I was, or even looking to see who they're voting for politically, going to their Facebook and saying, we're not going to move forward with this person because what we see here. You want to eliminate that. Do not use this as a deciding factor if you get on there and start looking. You do it for one candidate, you're going to have to do it for every single one, and then you're going to find yourself really in a rabbit hole that you're going to end up regretting. And if it comes to just one candidate who finds out that that's how your hiring practices really evolve, then it's going to open the door for complaints and discrimination that you really don't want to deal with. So using really great screening processes with your candidates, some pre-screening questions, set interview questions within that time you have with them, to really find out who the person is. Skills testing to base some of those things off of to make sure this person is qualified. That's really going to get you a little bit further there than heading to the Facebook and doing your first initial search to decide on an interview.
Yeah, and I just want to add in too, a lot of that information, Summer, that that people find in social media is not accurate. right? You may have the wrong person, and so don't forget that you may be looking at the wrong person, have bad information. I've known someone to create a joke profile for themselves, because they thought they were young and they thought it would be funny. So just keep in mind that it is social media. It's not always accurate. So just remember that too.
Good thought, Whitney. Good thought.
Yeah.
There are a lot of accounts out there that probably are very old that are not meant to be seen.
That's right. All right, so this kind of brings us back to the accent thing. So I have a candidate that meets all of my job qualifications, but they have a very thick accent, and it's hard to understand them. Do I have to hire them? So I'll share a story. When in one of my previous roles at a preschool, I ended up hiring an applicant who had a very strong accent, and it was beautiful. It was a beautiful accent. She shared with me later that she was from Bulgaria, and it was just a gorgeous, beautiful accent. One thing I had to consider when I hired her, though, was she was going to be teaching 3-year-olds. And part of that, as when you're 3, is learning how to talk. So I had to really consider, beyond her skills of a teacher, but also her dialect and her accent and how it was going to affect the children's speech, right? Which was a large part of the role she was going to be in. So when you look at, does it prevent them from doing the job or others understanding them? Those are things that you really have to think of and consider. If it doesn't interfere with the role, if they're not going to be in a strong customer facing role, or maybe, it's a similar clientele they'll be working with, then those are, key things to keep in mind. But if it's just maybe a little bit hard to understand, really try to look past that. And like we've said already, look at their skills, their qualifications, look at assessments, and skills tests to really see if they can prove that they know the content, or they can show those skills and then show you what they have to offer, instead of just the accent. We are in the US, it's a great diverse population, and everyone has something to bring to the table. And so I really encourage you to look past someone that might be different from you, especially with a thick accent, and know that there's something to take away and something to learn from them. So just something to keep in mind.
All right. Now let's talk about working interviews. I'm sorry, every time I take myself off mute, it moves the slides further. So it's jumping ahead. If you keep thinking I'm jumping too far and then back up, that's what's going on. So anyway, you have a candidate, you've interviewed them, you've talked with them, and you're on the borderline, right? And you think, I really like this person. I think they'd be a great asset to the team, but I just need one more, yes, this is the person we want to do. We don't want to make a hire and then end up regretting it. So a lot of companies have gone to doing different working interviews and bringing the candidate in, having them work for a half day or a day, and making sure that one, yes, they're a great mix for their team and they add everything that they're looking for, and two, that the candidate truly thinks that it's a job that they want to do. Buy-in from both sides. And we really see that candidates learn to appreciate that, right? Moving into a new role, into a new job, new team members, it's intimidating and it's such a big step. You don't want to make the wrong move and then in 6 months be updating your resume, thinking you want to look for something else and getting called a job hopper. You don't want to have that reputation. So working interviews are a great compromise, right? The employer gets to understand this is the type of employee that I'm hiring. And then the candidate gets to understand this is truly what the work environment is like. They get to talk with the coworkers. and hear from them. What do you like about your job? You know, what keeps you here? And what are some of your hobbies? They get to really understand if they're going to mix with the culture, which is a huge thing in the candidates seeking employment right now. So with that in mind, you bring them in. Do you have to pay these candidates for coming in and doing a working interview? They are spending time with you. They are doing work. So what is required of that? Working interviews, if they are coming on site and doing work that is beneficial to the company, then they do need to be paid for that time. And that payment does need to be at least minimum wage. It doesn't have to be the rate that you're going to hire them in for, but payment for their time. Now, on the flip side of that, if you are just having them do some skills testing, which may be like a clerical test or something within Excel or a sales-based test that you send to them, they pull out their laptop in the evening and they complete it, that's not something that needs to be compensated for. Only working interviews where they are coming in and truly doing something that is beneficial to the company. So if they're answering phones, if they are hopping on a computer and really working through things, it does have to be compensated. And then gifts. Sometimes that comes up in an interview process. I've had clients before just really trying to be unique in their hiring process and make it stand out differently than what maybe their competitors are doing. And maybe they've had no-shows for interviews and they're beating their head on the wall like, what can we do? We want to thank candidates who are taking their time to come and interview with us. And yes, you can give a gift. I've talked with clients who have given small gifts as little as, you know, a Starbucks gift card to thank them. You know, grab some coffee on your way home. Thanks for coming in and interviewing. Others who do things a little bit more extravagant, but be considerate, like thinking if you do one gift for one candidate, you're not just trying to wow one, you want to wow them all. So it does need to be consistent for what you do with all candidates. I think that's something we've really seen a lot here, is that consistency is key, and making sure you treat all candidates the same. If that's something that you take away from today, consistency in making sure that everyone has fair and equal treatment is going to be the same. And then another question that comes up is flexibility. It almost kind of goes with the sick time as well, on how flexible a candidate needs to be. Like, what type of flexibility are they wanting for their work-life balance? What are their expectations? So, but also you need to know and be very clear about your expectations as well. Are you expecting this person to not have anything else that they're dedicating their time to, or do you realize that a lot of the workforce these days are working parents? And as I interview candidates every single day, something I find out, and as a parent myself, the school districts are not work friendly. You have to have a little bit of flexibility. So asking a candidate things such as, when are you available to work? What does your shift need to look like? But then also saying, these are our expectations. Does this work for you? You can't straight up ask, do you have kids that you need to pick up every day at 3:30? Or will your wife be handling that? Or will your husband be handling that? That gets into things such as, are you married? Do you have kids? All of those topics that are off limits in the interview process that once again can be seen as discriminatory. So being very clear in your expectations on, these are our hours, these are our working expectations. You need to be here from 8 to 5, or we have flexibility that we're able to work with. Our hours are 8 to 5, but however, we allow you to flex your schedule. This is what you would be this is what would be flexing for. I give a lot of examples whenever I interview, and not to straight up ask the question of what you need flexibility for, but I know how our company stands on that. And I put a lot of examples that hopefully will cover all areas that a candidate may ask about, such as doctor's appointments and dentist appointments. If you have things you have to attend for any kids' activities, I talk about that. I don't ask them if that is something that they're going to need flexibility for, but I provide a lot of examples so that they have their questions answered without having to say, oh, I have kids, and you know, around Christmas time they have some school programs, and I really want to make sure this is a work environment where I'm going to have the flexibility to go and do that. I'm hoping I answer their question by providing enough information on our company.
And Summer, I also want to mention, again, consistency is just key in all things HR, right? But also make sure that if you do make concessions or exceptions for anyone, you have to be ready to make them for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And in a smaller company, maybe it's not so difficult, but when you get to your larger companies where there's multiple supervisors in different areas or different departments, it's really important to stay consistent throughout the entire company, and that can be difficult. So just be sure if you start to see this happening, really look into, are we being consistent with everyone? Because that can really come back to bite you big time.
Right. And another thing that maybe comes up, like the flex, like looking for shifts, like looking for a specific shift. If you know that this is a Sunday through Thursday, 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. type shift, being straightforward, do those hours work for you? Is this something that you can do? And this is the scheduled shift. If that does not work for you, then this isn't a position for you, but this is what we're sticking to. And we know that these are the hours that are available. If you know that Sunday is an expectation and you're wondering if somebody goes to church on Sunday, you can't ask, do you go to church on Sunday mornings? Where do you go to? You say, this is the set schedule, the set shift. Does this work?
Yeah, and those are good points, Summer. Just always, like she said earlier, take it back to the job description. Ideally, everything is lined out in there, so there shouldn't be any surprises in theory. I know a lot of people don't read through the full job description these days, but it's just really important that that's such a good tool to use when screening applicants ahead of time. So just keep that in mind to add that on there. Okay, so just some tips that we think can help you ace the interview. So again, it is illegal to ask questions regarding these topics that are listed there. Specifically, the salary history has an asterisk by it because it's specific to states. There's actually 21 states that have banned salary history questions. So keep that in mind. If you have a specific question about your state, feel free to reach out to us and we can kind of go over that with you. But in order to stay out of hot water, it's really, really important to stay away from these questions unless you really think that they affect, the role or the job that this person will be doing. If you think it does affect the position, then there might be an exception to the rule, and you can ask a specific question. But again, reach out to Summer and I, and we can definitely help. And also, like she said, using skills-based questions during hiring is one step that can really help you avoid, negatively impacting your brand or getting into any legal trouble. So make sure you utilize that option there. And then make sure that your question list is set. Again, ideally, if you're interviewing, my suggestion is if you're interviewing multiple candidates, make sure that you have those questions, you're printing them out, you have one for each candidate to document your notes on. And you can go off of those questions a little bit as you're conversing with them. Like Summer said, you want to have a nice genuine conversation, but you want to make sure that you're asking every applicant the same question so you don't show any bias or discrimination in the process.
Yeah, Whitney, I think it's good to know that interviewing is not a one size fits all for every single organization, right? The way that higher level interviews is not going to be the same way that the company down the street interviews. However, there are set rules that really do need to be followed. And how does it work for your company? What's important to your company? What do you want to know for this position? And really making a interviewing and hiring process that fits the company culture. What are the things that are very important? What needs to be hit on? Like we said, skills testing is something that can be very unique. What skills do you want to look at? At higher level, we have a platform that we really can customize for every single company and sit down and say, okay, what does this person need to know? Is it Excel? Is it QuickBooks? Is it even emotional intelligence, right? Different things that come into play. And when you're sitting down and considering, this is ideally what I want my applicant to look like, and then kind of work backwards from there and seeing how you can really create that interview process to work for your company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if I could go back 20 plus years to when I first started interviewing and make some changes to my processes back then, I definitely would. I mean, I know I've interviewed or hired the wrong person. Summer, have you? I'm sure we've all done it. Sometimes people come in and we're just like, oh my gosh, we have to hire them. We like their energy, they're confident. They really seem like they're gonna fit the bill and fit in well. And then they get to doing a skills test and you're like, oh, they really don't know Excel like they said they did, or they don't know how to talk with people in large groups, and they're going to be in sales, so it's just some things that that kind of initial feeling is important. It is good to get that, but we encourage you to dig a little deeper with either skills assessments and set based questions while keeping these kind of laws and hot topics in mind.
Yeah, and I think back to when I was first graduating college, right, and they talked to you about an interview, and I don't know if you remember this or not, but like insane questions they would ask you that you would like have to prepare for. Like they may ask me about if I had, I can't even pull one out now, but it was like really like situational questions that were like really, really hard. And I think you get the most out of an interview, like we've said, if it's conversational, if that person is comfortable really just talking to you and explaining how well they can do the job, why they can do the job, and just showing up, you're going to get so much more out of it. So as you're making that list, not writing down all the intimidating things that are going to scare them off, but really thinking out questions that are going to initiate a conversation that is really going to be beneficial for both you, the interviewer, and the interviewee.
Yeah, and make sure you keep it centered around the job. I once had somebody ask, if you had to be a musical instrument, what instrument would you be? And I
Well,
thought,
Whitney,
well,
what would you be?
I know. I think I said a piano because I've always, yeah. Anyway, but I mean, I think the point of that was to see if I could think on my feet, right? Which I understand, but as a 19-year-old, learning, I think I was trying to interview with GNC at the time to work in their retail store, but it didn't really make sense to me. And I think you can definitely ask those questions to get people to think on their feet, like Summer said, the situational ones, but keep it centered around the role at hand, what they're here, what they came in for. And then you can get more information, information to use when making the hiring decision versus, what instrument they want to be or what animal they would be or anything of that nature. So,
They're probably already nervous enough,
yes.
right? And then what do they take away from the interview? You just told them all this amazing stuff about your company, why they should work there, and they walk away thinking like, I just told them I'd be a piano. Do they even like pianos?
Because you want to give an answer. Yeah. You want to extract information that's helpful, right, to your hiring decision. So just keep that in mind. You can ask inspiring questions, but keep it, focused on the job at hand.
Right. Well, Whitney and I, we are available for any of these types of conversations as you are working through trying to figure out, is my interview process what it should be? Should I make some adjustments? These are some of the questions maybe that I ask. I don't really know how that errs on the side of caution or not. Any HR type conversation, we are happy to have that with you. We've got both our emails and phone numbers listed there. Of course, you can call a higher level office and they'll point you in our direction as well.
All right, that's great, guys. Thank you. So now's the time. If anybody's been sitting on their hands waiting to ask some questions, you can type those in your messaging box on the GoToWebinar platform there. We'll give you a couple minutes if you have any burning questions. I know Whitney and Summer did a great job really covering everything, and hopefully everybody had some good takeaways and was taking some good notes. We will share the recording following the webinar and the slides, so you will have that. Questions. So there are some interview questions that could be trivial, and there's a couple here that want to ask Summer and Whitney, see what they think, because some things come up in conversation that might be an accident or it's just a natural kind of personal question. So let me throw some at you. How much did you earn at your last job? Are we allowed to ask that or are we not?
No. Nope. Really, that's a subject that is off topic. Asking a candidate, what did you earn? A lot of times I will ask a candidate, what is their salary expectation? Where are they looking to be? You can't go in and say, well, you were making 25 an hour at your last job, so I'm going to offer you 26. But you can't ask where they're expecting their salary to be at.
Yeah, just be very careful, because make sure it's based on, essentially the pay is already set, right? You know going into it, like, hey, this is our range. And so you definitely don't want to lowball somebody just because they might take lower and then have them leave down the road once they learn that somebody else gets paid more. So that's something to keep in mind. But yeah, make sure you're paying based on the role, the responsibilities, that they'll be doing, and then of course their experience and education.
You have a good idea whenever you see somebody's previous work history where their pay should be at. And that when I ask about expectations, I want to make sure sometimes that our range that we have set is in line with theirs, because if they give me an expectation that is beyond what I know the pay range is, I quickly say, hey, I appreciate that. This position is not going to pay where you're looking to be at. We can look at other options, but I just want to be upfront with you.
Yeah. What about, where did you grow up?
Yeah, so that's one. Again, we want to get to know people, right? Like when we meet people, we be like, oh, tell me about you. And a lot of times candidates will say, well, where do you want me to start? And I always say, well, it's up to you, but essentially learning where they grew up might divulge some kind of bias to who they are as a person and open up, options for or opportunity for discrimination. So while we want to get to know them as a person, right, we want to understand just who they are, be careful with that question, because You might, let's say they're from Louisiana and you hate Louisiana, you don't like LSU. Well, then all of a sudden you might not want to bring in that candidate because you don't want to see them wear purple and gold. So just keep that in mind. That you want to know more about their professional background more than anything.
However, don't panic if they start the conversation by saying, I grew up in Louisiana, and they disclose that, because you can't keep a candidate from disclosing that type of information. You just can't come out and ask it.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, good to know. So one last one here before we wrap up. Have you ever been injured at work?
Yeah, so once again, something you don't want to get into. That goes into work comp and disqualifying somebody because you're worried about what they're going to do, really on your dollar, on your time, and being a safety hazard. I don't know if that's the right word or not, so to speak, but it goes into those discrimination topics.
Yeah, and you might be curious, maybe, you oversee a manufacturing or production plant and you've already had so many accidents, so you really don't want to hire someone that might cause similar. Well, the fact is, just because it's in someone's past doesn't mean they're going to do it again. But again, look at those assessments, or even an on-the-job assessment where you could watch them perform a specific task or something, and really get a gauge for how safe they are and following those safety procedures.
That's great. Well, that wraps up the questions. Thank you again, Summer and Whitney. So I've got a shameless plug. They just received their CERM certification. So they've been working with customers on policy updates and job descriptions, and really just consulting and what's going to take their business to be compliant. So definitely encourage you to reach out if some of these takeaways today were a little bit scary for you, or if you have other things that you have going on within your company that you would like to speak with them about. They are definitely your go-tos. I did want to share too a couple other things that we have coming up this September and October that really falls in line with just compliance and efficiencies. So on September 17th, for those of you thinking about benefits enrollment and what's coming for the new year, one of our team members will be walking through how to best optimize that electronic onboarding process, and just making sure that you're prepared. So that'll be on September 17th at 11 o'clock Central Time. So you can email me directly at hello@higherlevel.com if you want to make sure you get on that list to attend that. And then, of course, in October, we are starting to think about year-end prep for payroll compliance. So we have a couple of our internal team members going to tackle that topic in October, on October 15th at 11. So again, some great things coming up. It's fast and furious towards the year end, so everyone's wanting to make sure they've got everything in tip-top shape. So we want to provide you with that information, and thanks everybody for spending your morning with us.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thank you.